Hello and welcome to my FinalPitch presentation. My name is William Bixler and this is The Crimson Curse. The Crimson Curse is a 2D action survival game where demons and monsters automatically spawn whenever the player is hit by an enemy attack. Here you can see an example of this in action. The player is approached by an enemy zombie. The zombie gets close enough to the player and hits the player. Once the player is attacked by a zombie, another zombie spawns nearby. During the game, players must kill enemies with various weapons. The player must also save captive survivors who have been taken by goblins and locked away in cages, soon to be eaten. Each level, the player must save a certain amount of survivors. However, there may be more survivors than needed in a level. These survivors, however, can be saved for bonus points given at the end of the level. Players must escort survivors to survivor camps shown on the left in order to bank points. A few of the core player mechanics include running, which can only be done as long as the player has stamina remaining. If the player runs out of stamina, they can no longer run, but may return to the survivor camp to replenish. The player may also jump over obstacles and climb up and down ladders as well as attack enemies. In order to free survivors, the player must defeat the nearby goblins in order to free the survivors from captivity. Once the player has freed the survivor from the cage, the survivor will then proceed to follow the player around the map. Some of the enemies in the Crimson Curse include a variety of melee enemies, such as goblins, skeletons, and zombies. These enemies move and attack at varying speeds. The game also includes several ranged enemies, like wraiths, ghosts, and the Crimson Spirit. The Crimson Spirit, however, is the main antagonist and the one who gave the player the Crimson Curse, causing all of the monsters to chase the player. The Crimson Curse will be the final boss encounter the player will fight and will be the end of the game. At the beginning of each level, the player starts out with a makeshift axe, which is a melee weapon, causing the player to get close to enemies to attack them. However, the player may pick up other weapons around the map. These weapons, however, have limited ammo capacity and will disappear as soon as all of the ammo has been depleted. Some of the player decisions in the Crimson Curse include deciding whether or not to rescue all of the survivors, as leaving survivors behind will result in a lower score at the end of the level. Players must also be cautious of how long they take to rescue each individual survivor, because if the player takes too long to escort the survivor to the survivor camp, the Crimson Spirit will show up and begin to attack the player, and will disappear as soon as that player has finished escorting that individual survivor to the survivor camp. Another decision the player must make is whether or not to go for a weapon right away, as some weapons may be behind enemies, requiring the player to use their melee weapon they start out with longer than they'd like. Similar games to the Crimson Curse include State of Decay, because of its similarities with rescuing survivors, Doom, because of its styles of enemies, and Terraria, because it's very similar with how the player moves around in a 2D environment. Some of the risks with this project include the number of enemy types as well as balancing core mechanics. These risks can be avoided, however, by understanding the risks beforehand and conducting thorough playtesting. Thank you for watching my presentation, and I hope you enjoyed.